Hey guys, welcome back to Vertical Momentum. I'm your host, Richard Kaufman, also known as the Comeback Coach. Guys, it's going to be an awesome interview. Guys, if you have a beautiful bride like I do, if you have a beautiful teenager, young girl like I do, this is the episode for you. We're going to be talking about women's health all the way from the ages of 12 all the way to 100. This young lady that we're going to have on is one of my favorite people of all time. Her and her husband are the dynamic duo of health. Truly amazing. She's not only in the health and fitness industry, she's also a health professional. So we actually have a health professional on. So we're going to be talking about all things health, fitness. And I want to first, I want to thank my sponsors, Gorilla Mind Energy Drink. If you love energy drink with a focus, check out Gorilla Mind. And also, guys, if you want to start a podcast, I started opening up coaching to start your own podcast. So Meagan, welcome to the show. How are you doing, and how is your day going so far?
Hi, thank you so much for having me on. I'm super excited to be here. And yeah, the day is rolling pretty smooth so far, having a good one. It's finally feeling like fall out here, so I'm super excited about that for sure.
And like I said, I want to wish you and your hubby a belated anniversary. Your anniversary just passed, so I want
Yes.
to give a big happy belated anniversary. So first question right out the gate: what is your definition of resiliency?
I love this question. My definition of resiliency is to, personally be a person that can weather the storms, that creates a system of support around me to help me just navigate life, all of its ups and downs with as much grace as possible.
Okay, so now the people that are watching, they see you're successful. You have a great marriage, but life hasn't always been sunshine, rainbows, skittles, and unicorns. So give us a quick down and dirty about who you are, where did you come from, and how did you get into this crazy world of fitness?
Yeah. So I started my fitness journey back in 2014, so it's been just over 10 years. And this was before, social media was really big into the fitness culture, right? This was before video content that was a thing. This was before like highly educational content was highly available to us as consumers on social media. And so just like many people that I coach today, had a very limited understanding of what it meant to be quote unquote fit. So when I decided I wanted to be healthy, I was looking around in my social circles, and I just so happened to know people that were in the bodybuilding world. I had a close friend who was a bodybuilder, very successful, won several shows. So I just reached out to him and I was like, hey, can you kind of like help me? How do I get started? Like, what are first steps? And he ended up graciously taking me under his wing and kind of showing me the ropes around the gym. And then I was figuring out the diet stuff kind of on my own, just what I was finding on blogs and whatever else was available at that time. Like I said, it was kind of before video content was a thing. And so, that was great for a while. I did that for about a year. And then I decided because I was having so much success with it, I decided to go to school for nutrition because I was feeling better, like I had more energy. I was doing all the right things. And so I started going back to school for nutrition. And then I started learning that some of the eating behaviors that I had were very disordered, and that I didn't actually have a very good relationship with food. And so that was very eye-opening to me at the time. And some of those behaviors were very hard to unlearn. And then it was also this process of decoupling myself from bodybuilding and redefining what fitness looked like for me. Because while I was starting to go to school and get more serious about my career, it was very hard for me to keep up the demanding gym schedule and strict dieting that I was doing. So that's where kind of this push-pull dynamic started to come into play, where I was really struggling with my relationship with the gym and my relationship with food, trying to figure out what it all means and how it all fits in. So that's kind of where I'm at today, is like I figured that all out, and this is what Patrick and I help people with, because I feel like that's still kind of a common scenario that people get stuck in, is, you know, going through the bodybuilding route or something similar, thinking that's the only way to be fit, and then it doesn't fit into their life. So that's kind of what I've built my career around, helping people, and women specifically, with their nutrition, accomplish. So,
But now,
yeah.
you've traveled a lot, Murfreesboro, Tennessee,
It's where I'm from.
Miami, the
Yeah.
U. I love the U. But let's talk about bodybuilding, because a lot of people don't realize. Because like I said, I was in the fitness industry for over 30 years, and I've helped several Mr. Olympians get ready for shows. When they're on stage at that moment, looking their best, they're pretty much at their weakest. I mean, like,
Yeah.
there's no fat. They're water depleted, and a lot of times people don't realize that there's a really dark side to the bodybuilding and fitness industry. Especially
Absolutely.
if you're gonna, a lot of people use steroids. I've used them, diuretics and stuff like that. So how did you not? What kept you from going to the dark side of bodybuilding and fitness?
I was honestly never exposed to, I think, women's exposure to those kinds of things are different. Whereas, like, I was surrounded by a lot of men at the gym. I didn't have a lot of like women bodybuilder friends. I don't know if it was just like not as common back then, or if it was just like the gym that I went to that was closest to my house. I don't know. But I wasn't exposed to women doing those things. I was exposed to men doing those things, but it never applied to me like, oh, hey, maybe I should try those things. Like, someone told me like, yeah, I take diuretics, you should try them. But I was always kind of afraid of that. So I just, didn't do it. But as far as like any performance enhancing drugs of that kind, I just never saw women doing it. And I think it was less talked about in women's bodybuilding than it is in men's. And I think that's probably still true today.
But now there is a difference between dieting and dieting for a show.
Yes.
It's totally different, because you see a lot of the people walking around with their chicken and their rice, and they have everything measured out to the spoonful. So talk to us about the difference between dieting and getting ready for a show. How different it really is.
Yeah, I think it comes down to, and this is something I didn't realize when I started my journey, right? And hopefully anybody listening can learn from my mistakes. And if they're thinking about getting on a fitness journey, or maybe have felt like they're on and off again, is really tuning into the intention behind why you want to get healthy. Because if it is something like you're wanting to sustain long term, then we look at lifestyle, we look at figuring out how to make this sustainable for you. Whereas if you're just doing it for bodybuilding, where they are that lean for a very short amount of time, like, it's very intense what they have to do. And that is not going to be appropriate for everyone. Right. And so the real difference is like, extreme dieting for short-term results, knowing that it is just short-term results, or dieting or figuring out and changing lifestyle factors for long-term sustainable results. Those are two kind of the differences there.
All right, so like, I have my degree in fitness and nutrition, and when I went to class and I first started, and then I'm like, okay, for a while I was reading bodybuilding magazines and stuff,
Mhm.
but then they start getting into anatomy and physiology and all this stuff, and I was like, wow, I didn't even realize what I was getting into when I started to going to get my certifications. So, what was your thought process in starting to go for your certifications, and was it easy as you thought it would be?
Oh my gosh, no. I becoming a dietitian is one of the hardest things I've ever had to do in my life. Probably will be one of the hardest things I've ever done in my life. Because like so many science classes, like we're basically pre-med, and we just don't go. There's like a couple classes that we don't take at the same as pre-med students. So we have to take all the chemistry classes, biochemistry, A and P, all the medical nutrition classes. So, and then after that, once we finish our bachelor degree, when we graduate, in order to become a dietitian, you have to complete a 9-month long internship, accredited internship through a university to get your supervised practice hours. It's 1,200 hours. And those are very competitive to get into. So you have to pass that, and then you have to pass a national exam. So it's a long process. And even now they're requiring a master's degree on top of all of that. So yeah, becoming a dietitian is not for the faint of heart. The classes are very hard, and the trek to get there is a long one, but it's one that I feel like has been so invaluable to my life. And I absolutely love what I do. So I definitely don't regret it at all.
Now, my son is actually in his sophomore year at East Stroudsburg University. He's going to school to be an athletic trainer, and I got him some friends that work for the Miami Dolphins, so I'm trying to get him in there. But what did you do? Because a lot of people, okay, you graduate, you have the diploma. A lot of people put it on their wall, and then they're like, "Oh, I don't know what to do with this. Do I want to work in a hospital setting? Do I want to work in a rehab setting? What kind? Do I want to go into personal training and fitness?" So, what was your thought process when you finally got that piece of paper?
Yeah, so this is where I'm grateful for my internship, because my internship was really the place for me to explore different avenues of dietetics. So you have to complete 4 different rotations in different dietetic settings. So I spent 12 weeks in a hospital acute care setting. I spent 6 weeks at an eating disorder clinic. I spent 6 weeks at another hospital facility working in management, and so overseeing all the food service stuff. So when you go to the hospital and you get your meals, like a dietitian's in charge of that whole system usually. So I got to do that. And then I also got to do 6 weeks in a research setting, helping with research that was going on at the university that I was at. And then at the same time, which I'm grateful for those experiences, but honestly, none of them like gripped me. Like, this is what I want to do long term, especially working in a hospital, because that's what I thought I was going to want to do. Because working in acute care, like, you get to see crazy things. But I think it's too high stress of an environment for me. So thankfully, Patrick, while I was in school, my husband, he was building an online fitness business at the time. And so that provided a very easy transition for me to come in and just start doing the nutrition side of things with him. So I'm very grateful that he was already doing that ahead of time to create that opportunity for me. So it was either do that, but yeah, the entrepreneurial side of things was like very appealing to me because of my internship. I just felt, I was like, I don't know, none of this just feels right. Like none of this feels like truly me, or like the impact that I want to have, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay, so then like I talked to your husband. We had an amazing conversation. We
Yeah.
we had we had so much fun just shooting the shit.
Yeah.
You know, but we were talking about how there's a lot of coaches out there that are so cookie cutter. They're like, yeah, I'm going to give the same training program, the same eating program to everybody.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work that way. Like when I sit down with a client, my first question is, it's not what you're eating, it's what's eating you.
Yeah.
What are you stressed out about? Why are your hormone levels whacked out? So how important is it for a coach or um, somebody like yourself that sits down face to face with somebody to get to know that person, to get know their likes, their not likes, and what their personal situation is? Because do you believe that sometimes it's not what you're eating, but what's eating you that's causing a lot of problems?
Oh, 100%. Stress is at the base of the pillar of importance of trying to manage your health. Because a lot of times, you know, our eating behaviors stem from something else going on beneath the surface, right? A lot of my work is with dealing with emotional eating, right? Disordered eating. And that has less to do with the food, but more about sometimes, the environment that we grew up in and what we learned about food, the relationship we have with food, what we start to associate with food, right? Are we using food to cope with stress or emotions, right? And sometimes that's the only means of coping we have ever learned as a tool. And I tell people all the time, like, that's okay. But if it's the only tool in our toolbox, then we're really doing ourselves a disservice. So really working on, like you said, what's eating you and figuring out other more effective and the words is escaping me right now. But yeah, effective ways of dealing and coping with our emotions and what is eating you at the core is so key, because if you don't address those things, you're going to be running around in circles and being like, why is none of this sticking? It's because you're not getting to the root cause of the problem.
And I love it. And I got to give a big shout out to Chad Potts,
Yeah.
RevRx. He's the one that actually put this all together. So I got to give big love to Chad. Love you, brother. But now I want to ask you about a particular video you put out, because I am following you guys. You put out a video on October 8th
Yeah.
talking about labels. And it's funny how on the first week of January, you go down the aisles, everybody's sitting there looking at labels. But
Yes.
on June and July, nobody's looking at any labels whatsoever. But how important is it to not get so bogged down in the minutia, but to actually be able to enjoy eating and having a good relationship with food? But if you're going to, instead of going on a diet, to have a lifestyle plan. And I think that's what you were getting at on that video, right?
Yeah, definitely. There's just, those types of posts that I put out are usually in response to a lot of questions that I get around, what are your thoughts on X ingredient? What are your thoughts on seed oils? What are your thoughts on all these things that are just circulated on social media quite a bit? And my answer to that is always, those posts that people put out talking about ingredients and seed oils and that kind of stuff, those are majoring in the minors, right? Those focusing on those types of behaviors of like changing or worrying about those ingredients are going to be the smallest thing to turn the dial in your health, when there are other levers you can pull to get better results faster. And so usually that's what I tell people is like, those things matter the least. It's more about your lifestyle and your overall like dietary pattern and quality. So it's like, if your diet is full of processed foods and you start eating more whole foods, is it because you stopped eating one single ingredient, or is it because you started eating more whole foods as a whole? Because you started eating more whole foods, because you need more vitamins, minerals, water, fiber, all of those things are helpful. It's not just one single thing. And I think that's where people get a little caught up on things and worried about things. So yeah, it's more about like, what are these overarching behaviors that we can change that are the biggest, like strongest levers that we can pull. And then you'll start to see results from that. Hopefully that answered your question, but that's kind of what that post was about.
Because I love that. And like I said, I was with GNC for 30 years, and I knew that January 1st, people are going to be coming in a truckload, putting like $400 worth of stuff on the counter. And they would kind of get mad at me because I would be taking stuff away from their pile, putting it back on the shelf. And I'm like, you don't need that. You don't need that. You don't need that. Start with the basics. You don't need to go crazy. So, because I believe that if it's called supplements for a reason, it's only supposed to supplement your diet. It's not supposed to, take this pill and then you're gonna lose weight. And if you do, you might lose it for a while, but you're probably gonna put it all back. So, what is your thoughts on food as your supplements?
Yeah, you can't out supplement a bad diet. And a lot of times too, what people don't realize is supplements are unregulated by the FDA. So they are not, anything and everything can be in those supplements, and the company is not legally liable to tell you about it, which is really scary. So I would rather focus on whole foods that I know for sure are going to make you feel better, rather than spending, like, I'd rather you spend that $400 at the grocery store buying good quality produce and groceries, rather than spending it at the supplement store on something that you're not even sure is what it says that it is. So yeah, definitely like focusing on whole foods as much as possible. Like getting it, like I said earlier, it's all about diet quality over like the supplement stuff. And those definitely have a time and a place, like you have a diagnosed deficiency in something, then that's definitely applicable, but you need to be working with your physician and dietitian to figure that out, right? But just randomly taking supplements because we think that they're good for us usually isn't the best tactic or way to like get healthy.
Now, I also get this. A lot of people say, "Well, I can't afford to eat healthy," and then I
Mhm.
go through their checkbook through the month, and they've ordered from DoorDash like 32 times. They're getting a coffee every single day at Starbucks.
Right.
So, and I believe that what you prioritize, and we talked about this with Patrick. Whatever you prioritize in your calendar and in your checkbook, that's the real priority in your life. So is it really as expensive to eat healthy as people think that it is?
So first, I do want to acknowledge groceries have gotten more expensive for
Yeah.
sure. Like they definitely have, but I do not think it is as big of a barrier as people think it is. I think you just need to learn how, it's just like anything else. It's like learning a new skill. It's learning how to shop smart, right? And just and really paying attention to what you're spending your money on at the store because there could be four options of the same product in front of you, but paying attention to the price, right? And finding the one that's the most affordable and that works the best for your budget, right? So it's those types of things. And like you said, making it a priority. I think we get really caught up in the lifestyle of convenience. And that's where DoorDash and going through the drive through, they feel really convenient and like they're helping us in some way. But in reality, like what is the price of that? Right. And if it's your health, then we need to start to prioritize like, okay, maybe DoorDash is okay every once in a while, but how do we start to incorporate some healthy convenience foods because they do exist. Again, like I said, shopping smart and just knowing that those options are available. I just don't think that a lot of people realize that it is as accessible. You just have to learn like any new skill.
All right. So then also I see, I mean, me and Patrick talked about this, is you'll see somebody on January 1st and be like, I'm never eating bread again. And then they just go through their house, they get rid of everything. And then on the April 1st, all the bread's back in the house because they didn't learn to change their behaviors and the way they act with food. But I think you can't change everything at once. Like for me, if I want to learn a new skill, I have to take it, crawl and then walk and then run. So, what are your thoughts on how do you start changing the way you eat and the way you work out? Is it all balls to the wall, all or nothing, or do you have your clients start out with baby steps?
Yeah, so I want to continue on with your example that you just gave about like throwing out all the bread and all the food at the start of the year because I think that is a very common thing that I see for sure. And to anyone that maybe has done that in the past or feels the need to do that when you feel like you want to start over, it is that shows me that you are thinking the food is the problem and not your relationship with food. That is the problem. So really, again, it comes back to what we were talking about of like getting to the root of the issue as to like why we can't have bread in the house, why we can't have sugar in the house because we'll just overdo it. It's like, well, why will we overdo it? What is that relationship there? Why do you not trust yourself around these foods, right? Like why is that an issue? And so that is where like really learning to sit with the discomfort of having those foods in the house, learning how to be around them and not reacting is the skill that needs to be learned. It's less about cutting out certain foods and more about learning how to live with them and enjoy them in moderation. It's a lot harder than it sounds. But like you said, it is just like a slow progressionary type thing where we'll start small and then we eventually will feel comfortable around those foods all the time to where it's like, yeah, I can just have a little bit and then I'm good with it. Right. But that's not going to start by just throwing out everything and then just starting from scratch. Right. Like I call it kind of like exposure therapy. We have to continuously be exposed to these foods and build trust with ourselves that we can be around them and not overdo it. And yeah, that just takes time and practice, honestly, because and diving into, what did what have we been exposed to in our lifetimes that has told us that bread, sugar, candy, all these things are bad for us, right? And really understanding that relationship first.
Oh, no, I'm in recovery from drugs and alcohol. 30. I'm going on 36 years next month. Uh, and I know that if I'm hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, I'm heading for a relapse.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of the people that I talk to, if there's certain triggers where they're, instead of lashing out at their kids, they're going to go get that gallon of milk. I mean, gallon of ice cream and just eat.
Yep.
So, do you think that that's something we need to really hone down on? Is realizing what our triggers are, and for, like you said, instead of reaching for the bowl of candy bars, maybe just grabbing one. Do you think we
Yeah.
need to know our triggers?
Absolutely. That's yes, absolutely knowing your triggers and understanding, like we talked about earlier, stress, like what's eating you, what's causing you to want to reach for that bowl and say, okay, this is what's going to soothe me right now, right? And that just shows like we need to learn more coping mechanisms other than food. Like food is an appropriate means of coping. It's okay to have that as a tool in your toolbox, but it should not be the only one in your toolbox. And like you said, absolutely knowing your triggers and knowing yourself is the first step to kind of breaking free of that cycle for sure.
Okay, now, like I said, I can't speak for women. I've trained women. I don't enjoy it, but you know, the average person, man, female, their body changes every 7 to 10 years. So, like my daughter's 13, going through her stuff. Eventually she's going to be 23, then 33, then 43. And I think that you can't eat the same way at 53 that you did at 13, because your metabolisms and your hormones and stuff like that. So talk about the evolution of a woman from, say, 13 all the way to 53, about how their body changes over the time.
Yeah. So when we're younger, we are usually innately more active. We're going to school, we're playing with friends, we're, getting out and doing things. We want to be social, right? And yes, as kids, our metabolisms are much higher because we're growing, right? Like we're not mature. Our bodies are not fully mature yet. So our metabolisms are higher because we're growing. We have a greater nutrient needs, right? Some of the kids will play sports, so that adds on to the amount of food that they need to eat, right? So that looks very different than when we transition into like early adulthood, 20s, 30s, right? Where we're entering into maybe our first job for the first time after college. We start to become more sedentary. We are reaching full maturity, right, in our physical bodies. And so our nutrient needs are going to be different, right? And so I try to look at this through the lens of how is our environment changing instead of, oh, there's something wrong with me because my metabolism is changing. It's like, no, how is my environment changing? Like how is my lifestyle changing, right? And then how do I respond to said environmental change and lifestyle changes, especially as we get into adulthood. So when we're in our 20s and 30s, we're fully mature, right? Like we're probably more sedentary because we're working 9 to 5. So those are all lifestyle things to keep into consideration. It's why sometimes we'll end up gaining weight when we get older, right? Because we're not working out as much and all these other things. Some of us start having families. That's going to take away, some of our focus to put onto ourselves. So again, our lifestyles are just changing over the years. Now, when women go into their 40s and 50s, and we're going to go through perimenopause and menopause, that does change our metabolism quite a bit. And this is why women, it's really important for us to strength train and eat enough and get out of dieting, so we can actually give our bodies the proper nutrition that it needs to get through menopause and give us the best chance of holding on to skeletal muscle mass as much as possible, because that's what's going to help us age gracefully. So menopause will definitely change those kinds of things. Our metabolism will change. Our bodies start to go against wanting to keep muscle on. So we have to do everything we can to kind of fight back from that. So yeah, that'll take us into our 50s, and then postmenopausal 60, 70. Yeah, it's mainly just maintaining what you have at that point. But again, it's all lifestyle related. It's like, how do we respond to our lifestyle? How do we build an environment to support what our bodies are needing at those given times?
And something that like I talked about with Patrick is, you know, a lot of times people think I got to go to the best gym, I got to use the best equipment, and sometimes it's just as simple as put on your walking shoes and get to stepping, go out for a walk.
Yeah.
Like for me, that's my favorite exercise because I'm like you, I'm a voracious reader. I've read over 6,000 books and I have 18 going now,
Nice.
plus 2 audio books. But I'll punish myself. I won't let myself listen to audiobooks in the house. I have to be on the road walking in order for me to listen to the audiobooks that I get from Audible every month. So how important is it, even is it just go for a walk around the block to get it started, and then make it twice around the block, and it's really low impact, right? And most people can do it.
Yeah, everybody can get up and walk and give it a shot, and even if you can't go that far in the beginning, you will get better. Your body will adapt. It's very smart and it wants to move, right? We just have to practice it. We have to tell our body this is okay, right? We have to normalize walking and, like you said, just small little things. And I love that you reward yourself for getting outside and walking. I do something similar. If I'm like not feeling motivated to get up and go for a walk, I'll be like, oh, I can listen to an audiobook. That would be fun, to kind of help get me over that hump of wanting to walk. But yeah, like you said, it's very low barrier to entry. It's free, right? It's something most people, as long as we live in an area where we feel safe, everybody can do it, right? And it is one of the best entry points to getting people moving, in my opinion.
So then, now this might be a little controversial, and that's okay because I like it. Uh, if you ever go to like an amusement park, and if you just sit there and watch people, it's amazing how overweight a lot of kids are and
Yeah,
parents are. So why do you think, even though we have Whole Foods, we have a lot, we're trying to push healthiness, why do you think that we're, as a nation, we're the heaviest we've ever been?
sure. Um, this is where the social determinants of health come into play. And this is where I really try to adapt a very empathetic approach, because there's a lot that goes into someone not prioritizing their health, right? Like, I've had clients in the past that were working 2 to 3 jobs just to stay afloat, right? And that really limits the amount of time you have to exercise. And then also, if you are on a really low budget, your access to food, to healthy foods might be limited, right? And that is a very real thing. So I think there are some systems at play that we have here in the US that really compound over time. And it's like, yes, people need to take personal accountability for their health. I 100% believe that. But it's also acknowledging the challenges that they're facing and why it's so hard for them to do that, and helping them and validating their experience and helping them feel safe to confront what those challenges are. So that's kind of, for me, it's more systems than it is the individual. I never want to like be like it's your fault, I want to be like, okay, what are the systems at play here that are creating the environment for someone to be overweight, right? And it is a lack of education too. Like, a lot of people just don't know, and there's a lot of misinformation on social media. Again, like we were talking about, worrying about the ingredients, right? Like, those are things that are actually making someone's health worse because it's worsening their relationship with food. Because once someone starts unnecessarily restricting those foods, it actually causes binging on those foods as well in a lot of people. So there's a lot of different things that are kind of in this tangled ball of yarn that I think lead to, the health problem that we're facing in our country. I don't think it's just one specific thing.
Okay, but now, like I said, I struggled with this stuff too, guys. So you're not alone. I struggle with the same things you guys struggle with. But now, also, if you look in the rise of the last 100 years of us eating a lot of grains, a lot of sugars, the cancer, because it is Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and I have a cousin that's dealing with it right now.
Mm,
Um, there's certain cancers that feed off of sugar,
Mm.
So I think the more sugar that we do consume, the more chance, if we are going to have cancers, a lot of cancers will actually feed off the sugar. So we might actually, it might get exacerbate a lot more. What are your thoughts on food versus cancer?
Yeah. So I obviously eating too much sugar. So at baseline, our bodies need sugar. Okay. Our bodies run off of glucose. Our bodies run off of sugar. It is the preferred fuel source. Okay. At baseline, like we need it. But an excess amount of sugar, right, when we're eating too many carbohydrates and not balancing out our plates, right, with protein and fiber and all the other nutrients, having high blood glucose levels is inherently inflammatory, right? And that is going to exacerbate or increase your risk of getting cancer on top of being sedentary, on top of not resistance training, on top of all stress is a huge one too. So it's not just diet. Like diet plays part of a role in that, but again, it's like overall or overarching like lifestyle factors that also contribute and are compounding factors onto increasing someone's risk for getting cancer and someone's genetics as well. It's like, does it run in your family line? Then maybe we should pay attention to these things as well. So yes, diet can exacerbate some of these things, but is it the sole cause? No, someone could have cancer, completely clean up their diet and still not respond well to treatment, right? Because there are other factors at play there. But obviously, like having the best diet quality that you can is going to, and also exercising, sleeping well, reducing your stress, these key pillars are going to give you the best chance at not developing any type of chronic disease, right? Not just cancer, but any chronic disease. So it lowers your risk significantly. So I always, when I come from a place of, I'm very big about preserving our relationship with food. And I never want someone to feel super anxious about eating when it comes to developing chronic illness or risk for chronic illness, risk for cancer, that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, let's look at your lifestyle, right? It's not just the food. Let's preserve your relationship with food, do what we can, but also look at these other factors as well.
You know, then I also look at like my best friend. He owned the GNC that I was with for 30 years. He's from India, and for some reason there's a very low cancer is a very low rate in India.
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, I mean, just for me, I'm not a professional, guys. Like I said, not a professional here, but I think it's because they eat a lot of turmeric, curcumin, and a lot of countries they use milk thistle a lot for liver. So, what are your thoughts on like different herbs and like I know Tom Brady, the football player, he doesn't eat anything with tomatoes because he believes that it causes inflammation in the body. So,
Yeah.
I think there's certain foods that cause inflammation, right? And there's certain herbs that might help with inflammation.
Yeah. So Tom Brady's a hard one for me to be completely. Yeah, but with certain foods, it's like and herbs specifically, there's research, the research is inconclusive. It's like it might help, but these bigger lifestyle things are going to make the biggest difference. Like I'm not, I don't know what the lifestyle of someone who's living in India looks like. Maybe they're walking more, maybe they're able to manage a healthier body weight at baseline, right? Maybe they're sleeping better, like maybe they're not as stressed as a nation, like who knows, right? Like those are the things that really cause and lead to chronic disease rather than like these specific things, nutrients that they're eating. Those things can maybe play a role, but it's probably not as big of an impact that we might think it is, because their diet is a little bit different. That might play a little bit of a role, but it's probably not the one thing that's differentiating their health outcomes compared to us, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I'm just saying because this is stuff I could just geek out
Yeah.
on. I
Yeah.
love this stuff. Like I have friends that live in France, and their their heart disease rate is much lower than the United States, even though their fat consumption is a lot higher.
Mhm.
But I think like my dad came from Italy, where they live to like a lot of them live to 100, 105, because a lot of them are eating fresh food right out of the water. they're eating vegetables, but their stress levels are like practically zero.
Yeah,
And I think stress causes inflammation.
it does.
So how do you learn to, if you're somebody that's a type A personality, how do you learn to de-stress and decomp yourself?
Yeah, so they call stress a silent killer for a reason, right? But actually, if we learn how to tune in, it's not a silent killer. So it comes back to understanding your triggers, like we talked about earlier, and understanding yourself for a little bit more in depth, right? Is what does stress look like for you? What are the behaviors that you have associated with stress? Okay, I'm a type A person, so I will speak to this for myself. Stress for me looks like my schedule is, I have overbooked myself, right?
Yeah,
Like I have
yeah.
not put in, I'm starting to skip workouts because my schedule's too full. All of my, sorry about the thumbs up. Uh, all of my, yeah, my just getting overbooked. And I have not put in any room for self-care. I'm not taking as good of care of myself. And that stuff just builds and builds and builds and builds over time until I am just completely burnt out and I feel like I need to take a vacation from my life, you know? And that is what stress like looks like for me as someone who is very ambitious and wanting to accomplish goals and also build a business, right? And so that's something I have to be very mindful of so I can actually show up for my clients, for my husband, for myself in a way that they deserve, right? And that starts with understanding that I can't overbook myself. I have to really be aware of my stress and my triggers in that way too.
Okay, so let me ask you, because we're both type A personalities. Patrick is type A personality, and I think people that are successful, um, we have to learn our rhythms. Like for me, I always hear, for certain people, you got to get up at 5 a.m. But I'm like, but that doesn't work for me. Like this
Yeah.
morning, I slept till 9 o'clock. I told my wife, wake me up at 9, because I know my rhythms where I'm more awake, I'm more pumped up and ready to go. Afternoon, evening time, and nighttime. That's my rhythm. So how important is it for us to realize, okay, maybe working out in the morning is not right for you. Maybe you can get that 20 minutes at lunchtime at work, or like here in my office that I'm building. I have weights, and I actually have bands to work out in. So how important is it for us to learn our rhythms? It's because our
Yeah.
rhythms are not like our partner's rhythms might be different than our rhythms.
Huge. And being out of sync with our own natural rhythms actually causes more stress. So you could be hearing advice online like, yeah, you need to wake up at 5 a.m. You need to work out. You need to do a cold plunge. You need to do all XYZ in order to be Zen, right? Which could actually be causing more stress to you because you're not getting, maybe you're only getting 5, 6 hours of sleep when you need to be having 7 to 8 to 9 hours of sleep to feel rested and rejuvenated, right? And so absolutely understanding, are you a morning person? Are you a night person? What is your schedule like? And what do you prefer that to be? Like you said, maybe you can get 20 minutes in at your lunch and that feels more doable for you. Like the compass should always be what feels the easiest for us to accomplish. Being healthy does not have to be hard. It can absolutely be an easy thing that flows into our life. And that's how it should be, in my opinion, because that's the only way we're going to stick to it, right? That's the only way is if it feels congruent with us deep down. So, like you said, knowing your rhythm is huge for preventing stress. And I think that that is a stressor that maybe we're not even thinking about or acknowledging exists, right?
Now, how important is it for, in your opinion? And once again, I want to say thank you so much for coming on and hanging out today.
Yeah,
I
this has
want
been
to
great.
thank Patrick. I had so much fun. But how important is it to, for me, if I don't write it down, if I don't have it in my calendar, it's not getting done. It's
Yeah.
something that I learned early on in my entrepreneurial career, that what gets measured gets cut. So for me, like when I had David Meltzer on, he's a billionaire. He's like, everything I do, even if it's fun, I schedule it. And I think that's so important because like when I worked with GNC, and if I knew I was there for 12 hours, I couldn't leave the store to go home unless I did 36 sets of push-ups. So whether that was in between customers, I'm doing my sets and I'm writing them down, but it was in my schedule. So how important is it to even your health and fitness to be added into your calendar?
Yeah. I definitely, for me as a type A person, I live and die and breathe by the calendar, right? If it's not in there, it's not going to happen. I will probably forget about it also. But I also acknowledge like some people have a harder time functioning on like a traditional calendar. So when we talk about consistency, because I think that's what you're getting at is like holding yourself accountable, like finding something to hold yourself accountable to. For us, it's calendars, right? And again, understanding yourself on this level is like, what is it that helps you stay accountable? Is it telling your partner like, hey, at this time, I'm going to go for a walk. Like, and if I'm not doing it, can you kind of bug me about it? Right. Like to make sure I'm doing it. If for me, if it's in the calendar, it's going to happen. I've already set the time aside to do it. I'm going to show up and I'm going to do it. So really what you're talking about is that level of accountability and like, what are you needing to be accountable? I think is a good question to ask yourself if consistency is an issue, because that's the only way to get the health outcomes you want, right?
Okay, so now this is a teaching podcast. Like I said, I'm so grateful for both you and Patrick for coming on the show, and I appreciate both of you. Different perspectives,
Yeah.
same results, different perspective, which I think is great. So if somebody is looking to get healthy, I think it's October 16th, 24. If somebody's looking to get healthy starting today, what would be your top 3 pieces of advice for them to get started?
Ooh, great question. I would say the first thing you should do is write out your goals. What do you want to accomplish long term? And then from there, you start to break it down into I have a goal. Okay, what skills do I need to accomplish this goal? You'll break down the skills that you need. Maybe it is, I need to learn how to cook. Maybe it is, I need to learn how to go to the work out in the gym. Maybe it is, I need to just learn something new about whatever you're wanting to accomplish with your health. And then once you figure out that skill, you break that down into practices, small little daily habits that you can do to help you achieve learning that skill and overall learning that goal. So that would be the first thing I would do is just write that out and figure that out. And then that way you have a roadmap of where you're wanting to go and how you're going to get there. And then the second thing I would do is figure out how you're going to be accountable. Who do you need to tell? Is it your calendar? Is it your partner? Is it your friends? Who in your community can help you stay accountable to this, right? And then the last thing is, I guess it would just be which one would be easiest to start with of those practices. Like choose one that feels 10 out of 10. I can do this right now. I can get up and I can go do it. So those would be the 3 things I would say to start to make sure you get that momentum going.
Okay, so and I got a text message from somebody wanting to know. This is from Francine. She wants to know. I listened. She said I listened to our interview with Patrick, and he told us what his night routine was and what his morning routine was. So now it's your turn. What is your night routine and what is your morning routine?
Yeah, so my nighttime routine is I finish work at between 6:30 in the evening. Patrick and I will eat dinner together, and then we will have some downtime in the living room. Patrick and I don't watch TV during the week. We just read. So I'm reading a book or I'm listening to an audiobook, something, just no screen time. And we'll do that for maybe an hour or 2. And then we will brush our teeth. I will take my contacts out, all that good stuff. And then we will get in bed and then maybe I'll read for a little bit longer until I feel like I'm ready to just like crash out. And then that's kind of it. In the morning, I wake up, I brush my teeth, I make breakfast. Sometimes I'll work out first thing in the morning. Sometimes I'll wait a little bit later in the morning, depends on my schedule. But yeah, I'll work out. And then I will get ready for the day, for taking on clients and all that kind of stuff. If I have time to read, I might squeeze in a chapter or two here and there, but that's not every morning. So yeah, that's pretty much
I
it.
love it. So
Yeah.
what do you got? What do you guys got coming up on the horizon? I know you guys got some great stuff coming up. So what do you guys got coming up in the next couple months?
Like personally or in the business?
Business wise and personally. And like I said, I've been following you everywhere. I love your Instagram. It's fire. I just want to let you know that.
Thank you.
So what do you got going up and on, and how can we support your guys in your mission?
Thank you. Yeah. So business wise, we're building up the nutrition portion of our program right now. And so I am taking on, just more clients and working on them one-on-one with their nutrition counseling. So that's really going to be a focus for us over the last quarter of the year. And we'll reassess on how all of that's going in the beginning of the year. But for now, that's what we're going to be focusing on and ramping up and all of that. And then, yeah, for Patrick, it's the same thing. We're just going to be kind of a united front on that. Personally, we're going to just, enjoy the holidays. That's what we have coming up. And we're going to go visit some family, which I'm looking forward to. So yeah, the last quarter of the year, we don't have as much going on. So I'm kind of looking forward to that, honestly.
So then where can we find you guys? Where can we support you? What if we want to get coached by you? How do we do that?
Yeah, so you can follow me on Instagram. I'm at mryan_nutrition. You can find me there and send me a message. I would love to meet you. Love to chat with you. I love connecting with everyone on just health and nutrition related topics. And then if you want to work with me directly, you can send me an email at nourishwithmeagan@gmail.com. And we can get you set up. I'll get you on a call and we can just see what you're needing and we can go from there and see how I can help.
And once again, I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you to Patrick. Such an amazing power couple, and I just appreciate you guys. And guys, if you're looking for energy, check out Gorilla Mind Energy. It's more for focus than it is energy. Check them out. And if you want to learn how to have a podcast like this with over 3 million downloads now, check out up above, and I'll get you that information. So Meagan, I just want to say thank you so much for hanging out with us. I truly appreciate you guys, and I love y'all.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Have a great week. And guys, as you know, I'm a big Joel Osteen guy, and something that he says, if you guys watch this show, you're no longer a victim of your past. You're a victor of your future and your present. Thank you guys for always showing up in force. I love you guys. And remember, vertical momentum. The only way to go is up. Have a great day. Have an awesome week. It was finally great to finally sit down and chat with you.
Yeah.
Have an awesome week.
Yeah, you as well.